name's Cam White. I'm the director of the Roughnecks.
And I am Nick Ruff, editor of the Roughnecks.
Yeah, we shot the movie a couple of years ago now at this point, and we shot it over the course of 4 months in Fort Worth. We embedded ourselves with a Pee Wee football team here in Fort Worth. The project began, I was an intern for the producer Marty Bowen several years ago. And so Marty and I had a relationship, and then we worked together on a few films. I was working as the EPK on a few of his films. And at the same time, Nick and I together did a sports, like a football documentary with Ray Lewis. And it was about that time Marty saw that, I think, and we were working together, and he said, hey, I've always wanted to do a documentary about my old Pee Wee football team in Texas. And so we just sort of said, let's do it, and it happened.
Well, sure. Another one that Cam directed. It was about a football camp called.
Yeah, it was called Nothing But a.
Nothing But a Grind. It was called Nothing But a Grind.
It's called Nothing But a Grind, and it was just a video project that we had a few years ago that sort of was like a staff favorite on Vimeo, and yeah, and it was just like it was a fun football commercial for a football academy.
Cool.
Yeah.
It ended up being a warm-up for this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we definitely, Marty and I had several meetings way before production, and we talked a lot about what we wanted the movie to be and feel like, and we really wanted to make a movie about kids. A lot of sports documentaries are made about the adults and made about the coaches, and we really just wanted to make a movie that was more about the kids and the families, and really, once we got there and we met the kids and the families, it was there was a pretty quick decision to make it really a father-son movie and a movie about fathers and sons. We were embedded with the team, with the families for about 4 months, and there was definitely a growth, a friendship that came out of it, and a closeness that came out of it. And most of the more intimate interviews or moments that happened in the film happened much later in the process, after we had gotten to know each other well and they were comfortable with us. And when we first got to Fort Worth, we had several barbecues, and there were several days we just filmed with them and knew we weren't going to use any of it. It was just to kind of make them comfortable with us and forget the cameras were there.
It was interesting too. You learned that it's like after doing a couple documentaries, at this point you learn not to do sit-down interviews with people right away. Because they're not used to you, they're not like they're not comfortable with you, they don't know what to say. But when they know you for 4 months, like the JD's dad story, I'm sure that came later in production. You didn't like show up and get that story right away.
One of the central figures in the movie, Mayland, the head coach, he initially really had no interest in being a part of the project. He just wanted to focus on coaching the team, and we were okay with that because we wanted to focus on the kids. But he was such an interesting guy that we ended up, about 3 months into the movie, starting to beg him for an interview, and he still wasn't that interested. And it wasn't until like the 11th hour that he said, yeah, come to work with us, or come to work with me. And
cool.
So we shot him at work and interviewed him. Really only spent like a couple days with Mayland outside of football.
So you shot 6 days a week pretty much for 4 months. So what that equated to 400 hours of footage. I think we somehow
Terabytes of footage.
Terabytes, hard drives and hard drives of footage.
Yeah.
And but what Cam and the team had done here when they were shooting here in Texas, they were pretty much storyboarding the movie on note cards while they were shooting. Cam had ideas for how scenes would flow into other scenes, and they had it up on a wall for a while, and that was such a help, because when he came back to Los Angeles for us to edit the movie, he brought those note cards with him, and we laid it out on his kitchen table, and we just talked about it for we didn't, without looking at any. I didn't watch footage for probably a week. We just talked, and we just went card to card to card. So by the time I looked at anything, I had a really strong sense of who JD was or who Darius was. So that was huge. A lot of documentaries you have to find the story in the edit, and that wasn't the case with this movie at all. Day
to day during production, we just tried to keep up with, if an interesting thing happened, I tried to make a note card for it, and we had a huge wall in the apartment we rented that was just dedicated to sort of the movie, and then every night I would just sort of stare at the wall and like move note cards around like John Nash from A Beautiful Mind. And then, and so it was an
less glamorous than that.
So it was an evolving process, and by the time we got to LA, we had it pretty worked out. But then it was great to sit down with Nick, who had, it wasn't as connected to the kids and stuff at that point, and go over what I thought the movie could be. And we spent a lot of time with the note cards.
For me, what I loved about the movie, which I think comes across, was that nothing's forced. There's nothing in the edit that lies to you about what happened. I've worked on other things where you've got to cut it a certain way to make this drama, and that wasn't the case at all. Everything that you shot was real, and it was a story. Like we weren't creating characters. These were real people that were also working for a movie.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next step in the process is trying to get it on video on demand, pretty much. Netflix, iTunes, Hulu, we'll see. We've got UTA representing the film. We're doing some film festivals, obviously starting with the Lone Star Film Festival, and which has been a blast.
Good.
And the next step, maybe do a few more festivals and then get it out there for the world to see. Well, one thing, it's about this documentary. Like when I watch it, especially on the big screen, it has a tendency to feel very raw, I guess, very shaky, very handheld, very all over the place. Sort of one of the ideas we went into it at the very beginning was I didn't want to do interviews. I've done a lot of EPKs for movies and sat people down and interviewed them, sort of like we're doing now. And then like you lay out the interview and then you put the B-roll over it.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted it to feel much more like a movie. And movies don't sit the main characters down and interview them and then show imagery. So it was more of a rock doc where we wanted to be a fly on the wall of these people's lives and catch them feeling angry or sad or happy, as opposed to having them tell us about the time that they were angry or sad or happy. And so going into it, I had no idea if that would work. And so I think I'm most pleased that it did.